When public figures, organizations, and social media personalities say that journalists are corrupt, institutions have been captured, and when audiences are told that there are only a few voices they can trust, that is not criticism, it's isolation, and it is done deliberately. Because if you convince people that every referee or critic is out to get you and is biased, then no one can actually challenge your claims. And once evidence stops mattering, repetition takes over.
Spilling the tea, essay, light on the way. Spilling the tea, essay, truth won't fade away.
Welcome to Spilling the Tea SA. I'm Bianca, your host, and today we're unpacking a number of things, specifically how echo chambers shape public debate in South Africa. We'll examine claims made by AfriForum about journalists allegedly being paid by the state to smear them, and we'll also discuss their PAIA application. We'll take a look at News 24's response to claims made by the CEO of AfriForum, Kali Kriel, and the press council ruling involving Renaldo Gouws, the Freedom Front Plus podcaster. We'll also take a look at how amplification networks work, and then we'll tie it all to a model that was put together by Maria Ressa, who is a Nobel Peace Prize winning journalist. And she specifically looks at disinformation and how it threatens democracy. In December 2025, Kali Kriel, CEO of AfriForum, put out a video on social media indicating that he has information from a credible source, he said a journalist, that specifically two journalists, senior journalists, are being paid by the state to run a smear campaign against AfriForum. There is a clear narrative emerging here. AfriForum is not being criticized. What Kali Kriel is saying, it is being targeted. It is being victimized. Its critics are apparently coordinated, and according to Kali Kriel, they are paid by the state. Now, I want to say that those are extremely serious allegations, and I do believe personally, if Kali Kriel or AfriForum or the Solidarity Movement actually had evidence of this, they would be putting it out very fast. However, he has now made that claim, and I'm telling you, if this was true, first of all, it's abuse of power by the state. There is also media manipulation and systemic corruption. So this is the claim that Kali Kriel is making right now. So it would be a huge democratic scandal. But here's the key questions. What evidence has been made public by AfriForum or the Solidarity Movement about the so-called smear campaign? What documents have been produced? What payments have been demonstrated? What verifiable proof has been shown? And so far, we can say no documentary evidence has been presented publicly to substantiate the claim. And that matters because serious allegations require serious evidence. Without evidence, a claim gains its strength through repetition. And repetition is not proof. Repetition is momentum. And I believe AfriForum and the Solidarity Movement know that. So Kriel indicated that AfriForum has formally submitted a PAIA application to the state security agency and then to DIRCO. Under the Promotion of Access to Information Act, those departments have 30 days to respond. So in this time, this unverified claim in certain groups is being spread and regurgitated. It is not being addressed. Instead of actually submitting this PAIA application when he had the information, he jumped the bandwagon and made the statement knowing exactly what impact it is going to have amongst a certain group. So like I said, they've got 30 days to respond. And if information is withheld, AfriForum can then approach the information regulator and ultimately the courts. Now, that is a proper legal process and something that we all have access to. But yes, what's important, a PAIA request can be denied. And it can be denied for a number of routine legal reasons. First of all, the records may not exist. For instance, if this claim is totally false, there will be no records to provide. Secondly, the request may be too broad or vague or unclear, which AfriForum's claim seems to be. And then there is also information that may be protected by privacy laws, and it may involve confidential information or material. Now, a denial does not automatically mean there is a cover-up. Yet, in this highly charged environment with these unsubstantiated claims, a procedural denial can easily be reframed as proof of this cover-up by the government. So until evidence is produced by AfriForum, the claim remains an allegation. But this does not necessarily help because it is out there, it was put out there by AfriForum without checking the details before they did this, but this is not the first time that they've done that. So a while ago, there was a letter that was signed by a number of Afrikaners in South Africa indicating that AfriForum and the Solidarity Movement do not represent them. And it was called the Not in Our Name letter. This was published first in Afrikaans media, Netwerk 24, and then after that in News 24 and other outlets. Now, this was a public statement signed by around 40 plus Afrikaners, including clergy, business people, journalists, and academics. And in that letter, they stated that AfriForum and Solidarity do not represent their views. They also indicated that they would not be used as Afrikaners as political pawns in the US-South Africa diplomatic tensions. Now, Creel framed that letter as a possible state security operation because one of the people, Karen Berger, she wasn't a signatory, her partner was a signatory, and she's a senior civil servant at DIRCO. And she had circulated a draft of that letter from her work email account at DIRCO to her contacts. Precision matters here. There is no publicly presented evidence from AfriForum or the Solidarity Movement that she drafted the letter in an official capacity. In fact, there's no evidence that she drafted the letter. The draft of the letter had come out already, but that would not fit within Solidarity and AfriForum's narrative. There is also no publicly presented evidence that the signatories were acting on behalf of the state. I have interviewed 2 of the signatories, and those interviews are on my channel. I will include the links and you can go and have a look at it because we address this particular issue too. So what has been cited is that she circulated the draft. That is not the same as a state instruction, a state-funded campaign, a coordinated state operation. To be blunt, I must say it would be a dramatically sloppy state-funded covert operation to use a government email address, disclose your state employment history to all the recipients in the email, and explicitly state you are acting in your personal capacity. So this is now evidence of the so-called state security project. Okay, but you need to notice the pattern here. Whether it's the claim that journalists are being paid or the suggestion that the state orchestrated the letter, the underlying message is the same. AfriForum isn't being criticized, it's being targeted, it's being victimized. And when criticism is reframed as coordination opposition starts to look like persecution. And that is the underlying goal. It is also how echo chambers harden. So after these claims, Peter de Toy, assistant editor of News 24, he's also a journalist and a best-selling author, responded to these claims in a News 24 opinion piece. And it was titled, Masters of Disinformation, Exposing Creole AfriForum's MAGA Playbook. He argued that as criticism of AfriForum has increased, and it has increased, Creole shifted the spotlight to the media with unsubstantiated claims. Now, the diplomatic tensions between the United States and South Africa created a moment to frame the media as part of a coordinated effort, giving supporters a clear target. So not only don't trust journalists, don't trust the media in general, okay, because they are targeting and victimizing a specific group, and they are on a mission to run a smear campaign against AfriForum and the Solidarity Movement. Oh yes, and make President Cyril Ramaphosa look good. In that article, the Toy described how the claims were amplified by certain social media commentators. And he includes Renaldo Gouws, the Freedom Front Plus podcaster, the Kifness, I believe he makes songs, and Con Caracol, which is Ernst van Zyl. He is the responsible for public relations at AfriForum. He referred to them as malignant echo chamber actors. Renaldo Gouws then lodged a complaint with the Press Council, arguing that the description was false, damaging, and unsupported. Now, on the 7th of January 2026, public advocate Thabo Lishilo declined to accept the complaint, stating that the article was clearly marked as an opinion and had no reasonable prospects of success. Gouws persisted, and the matter was then referred to Deputy Press Ombud Frans Creer. On the 17th of February 2026, Creer ruled that the article did not breach the press code. He found that the column was clearly identified as comment. He also said that comment is protected if based on fact and not malicious. He also said Gouws' own podcast showed he supported and amplified Creel's claims, and there was sufficient factual basis to describe his platform as functioning as an echo chamber, and there was no evidence of malice. After this finding, Gouws still has leave to appeal to the chairperson of the SA Press Appeals Panel. And this matters. And the reason it matters is because mainstream journalism operates within a framework. So there is a code, there is oversight, there is formal complaints processes. And if you believe you are wronged by mainstream media, there's a structured mechanism for independent adjudication. Social media, on the other hand, does not operate under the same accountability structure. What we must realize is that an echo chamber is not just agreement. It is a closed loop where journalists are framed as enemies, institutions are portrayed as corrupt, criticism becomes proof of bias, and repetition replaces evidence and facts. Inside that loop, claims don't need facts, they don't need evidence, they need emotion, they need engagement. So if you want to see how this works in real time, look at the case of the exposure of Sebastian Jooste, known online as Twatterbaas. Now, this anonymous X account spread highly polarizing content about South Africa. The posts were about farm attacks, claims about racial collapses, narratives feeding into the white genocide framing. And the tone was emotional, the framing was extreme, and the facts were often disputed, absent. Then something significant happened. And this is important. Elon Musk started engaging with that account. he reposted content from that account. And at one point, Twatterbaas had 2 subscribers, and Elon Musk happened to be one of them. And that single action massively increased the account's visibility, obviously. So a fringe account jumped into mainstream. That's amplification. Now, in their expose, News 24 actually looked at which accounts engaged with Twatterbaas's account. And they looked at the top 50 accounts interacting most frequently with Twatterbaas. AfriForum was one of the accounts. Con Caracol, in other words, Arends van Sail, Renaldo Gouws was one of them, and the Kifness. Now, this doesn't prove coordination, but engagement creates proximity. High-profile accounts interacting in the same space link their audiences, and that's what we have to keep in mind. Followers overlap, and you'll see that with your own account. If you've got a certain leaning towards, let's say, that you're on the left, you will notice that your followers generally overlap. Algorithms connect the clusters, and narratives move much faster. Twatterbaas also publicly vouched for Renaldo Gouws. Now, that endorsement becomes a trust signal. Trust transfers, reach expands, and the chamber actually tightens. And I must also say, I learned something personally in this process when Twatterbaas was exposed. I was identified as offering a counter narrative to the white genocide framing. Now, my intention was to challenge it, but even repeating the phrase white genocide critically increased its visibility. Algorithms don't reward intent, they reward engagement. So amplification isn't only about agreement, it's about attention. And attention is fuel, which brings us to the broader pattern. Maria Ressa outlines a predictable cycle. So first, what you do is you seed a message. Then you amplify it, you attack critics, you repeat it, you undermine trust. And a way to look at it is if we look at the example that we've just seen from AfriForum again, is a claim is made. So journalists are being paid by the state. It circulates. And then aligned voices start engaging with that particular claim. Critics are framed as biased. Repetition increases the familiarity. So the more you hear something, the more it sounds true. Trust in institutions erodes. And the claim doesn't need to be proven to have impact. It doesn't need to be based on evidence or fact. It only needs to weaken trust. And once trust weakens, people retreat into their networks. That's where the chamber locks in, and that's where this really matters. When serious allegations are made without evidence, when suspicions replace proof, when oversight bodies are dismissed, when institutions are framed as corrupt and evil, we stop debating facts. We start defending our identities. We must remember, democracy allows disagreement, but it depends on shared standards of evidence. Without those standards, everything becomes tribal. When someone makes a serious allegation, ask, where is the proof? Not the outrage, not the insinuation, not the attack, the proof. If someone is consistently light on evidence, but heavy on personal attacks, if every critic becomes corrupt, if scrutiny is met with hostility instead of documentation, that's not strength. That's the behavior of malignant echo chamber actors. They don't win with facts. They win by isolating you. They make distrust feel like intelligence. They make outrage and emotion feel like insight. And once you believe only they can be trusted, you're not in a debate anymore. And you're not applying critical thought. You're inside the chamber and part of the mechanism that will spread their particular narrative. Slow it down. Check more than one source. Demand evidence, because the moment you insist on proof over personality, the chamber starts to crack. Democracy matters because it gives us something rare. Peaceful disagreement, for instance, independent institutions, accountability without violence, power that can be challenged and changed. It only works if we protect the rules, if we defend evidence over emotion, oversight over loyalty, and truth over tribe. Echo chambers don't just distort information, they weaken the shared reality democracy depends on. And without shared reality, trust collapses. Without trust, democracy cannot function. So defend the institutions that can be questioned. Defend the standards that protect us all. Demand proof. Insist on accountability. Democracy is not self-sustaining. It survives only if we choose to protect it. And that choice starts with us. Thanks for watching Spilling the Tea SA.
Spilling the tea, essay, light on the way.